Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence, the king of podcasts radio network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
And welcome to the Wrestling is Real podcast. This is episode 816, and tonight I celebrate the 11th anniversary of the program. December 18, 2012 is when we first started, and it's changed a lot since then. So it was 3 people doing the show with me, 2 others in a round table, then 2, and then just me. I've been doing it for the bulk of it. And I did mention last week, I can never go ahead and just not give props to my previous co-hosts, Mark and Mark 811 and Jeremy G. I thank them both for, being on at Latin Mafia, by the way. And I appreciate the time they came on with me and did that. I know it's not easy for a lot of people to go ahead and do the show on a solo basis. I don't do anything with, I never evolved the show to do video. Never cared to. I'm a radio person. I started in radio initially January 1994. And I like being behind a microphone because, listen, you hear what other people say about other wrestling fans. We're neckbeards. We're big frothing bearded guys that are like, we don't need that. So I got pictures of myself out there. I don't have a neck. Well, let me rephrase that. Yeah, I've had a neck because I was a lot fatter than I was before now. Now, let's just say at some of my biggest points, you probably heard my voice sound like I was gurgling, cheeseburgers. But yeah, 120 pounds heavier at one point. Still trying to take off more, just to give you the heads up. Trying to get myself healthier. And then on top of that, in 11 years, we've seen what this whole business has done. And the intent of the program, when I brought it in the first place, this was the first program I brought under the King of Podcasts banner. And I was saying to myself, I got such a point of complaining and just bitching and moaning and griping about what was going on with wrestling. And I didn't want to just keep doing it to my friends and just keep talking about it and just ranting. So I needed a place to go. And it was always the thought of I was going to do a podcast once it was affordable, once it was something I could go and just do, and I had the equipment and I could just do whatever I need to do to go and get the show up. And it happened. And then what I decided to do was doing the show. My thing was just that if I was going to do any podcast, first of all, it was going to be wrestling because I know I could talk about it for hours. Sometimes I might not do it as much because after a while, we might go ahead and continue to go ahead and have our diatribes, but don't you get a little tired of it? I don't want to just fill an hour just to fill an hour, but my intent is to do an hour and talk about tonight's topic, which is the rotating cast of championship contenders, right? Because what I see right now, they're not ready. Now, before you jump down my throat, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So this is me under the guise of what has always been the expectations of the WWE fan, right? And I try to say it so fast. WWE fan. I don't just change my mind and just go with it. I just run fast, okay? But yes, a typical standard attitude era loving, ruthless aggression, praising WWE fan that expects Rock versus Stone Cold, or as close as you can get to a match like that every WrestleMania. You have your champions that have to be at a certain level. We have been under the guise of having folks like Bruno Sammartino and Hulk Hogan, among others, to be title holders. And when a title is going to get changed, it has to be something big. And when they decide to go ahead, when WWE decides to go ahead and take stars and make them long-time championship reign title holders, they want to give a long championship reign. This company's had a very tough time just in the last couple of years. Really, in the time it's happened, of being able to be capable of having champions that are, when the belts are taken off of them, that you want to have a proper payoff of them, right? And that's the part you got to think about of the titles. And it's something that very people out there are kind of stuck on trying to figure out, you know? Because you have to think about specifically the initial title that we're talking about. The title that always been mattered, that will always be either one or the other, that will be the most important. Currently right now is the Undisputed Universal Championship. We're talking specifically about, as championship contenders go, we're only discussing Roman Reigns. Because that's the end all be all of the company. Okay, now when it comes to the men's side and the highest profile, highest noticed star that they have in the company that everybody knows, that penetrates past the lowest common denominator to the fan base that is just atypical, right? You have to think about the fact that there are certain stars that are brought in here. And when you say to yourself, all right, you're going to go ahead and say which stars are going to be the ones that are going to be the top of the top, right? Stone Cold always says it. If you are not in WWE to become the world champion, then what are you here for? Because that is the only reason you should be here. And that goes along with everybody else in the company. And there are champions within, tag teams. And there are the other titles for the U.S. title or the Intercontinental title. And at the moment, they have a number of titles right now that have some long reigns. At this moment, that have held the belts for quite a while right now. Now, let's go and pull up real quick the current title holders at the moment, at this very moment. We're going to take this out of everything, okay? Just to make sure we're all aware of the titles and the length of time that the title holders have held the belts at this moment. So I'm looking on Wikipedia, and when you're looking at the stars that are the most significant, the most important, are the ones that are champions, because WWE recognizes that they make their champions more important, and that their championships and how they're used within storylines are the most important. They are always the main event, or the most important storylines in any premium live event or any major pay-per-view that they do, whether it's WrestleMania, Survivor Series, Money in the Bank, Royal Rumble, and the others. Now, outside of the championships, right, and the storylines they have with them, so whatever the feuds are for the belt, then you have the gimmick matches, which is the Survivor Series War Games match, the Royal Rumble, the Money in the Bank, right? Those matches that are also in consideration. But the year-round focus on this company, it's more than any feuds they have. Let's just put it like that too. Because how many real feuds do you have right now that could be bigger than what Roman Reigns would be doing? Okay? Or bigger than what the Bloodline was in the last, 2 years? Seriously. When you think about with WrestleMania, of course, Roman Reigns would have to headline one of those nights. So what would normally headline the other night? Well, a lot of times it was the women. Because the women they're trying to go and get equal billing to them, as justifiably so. And so they've done that. Now, the women's division, that's a different story. But we're looking at all this here. The complete look. So let's get into this right now. In the Triple H era, we're not hot potatoing the titles. They haven't done that. Then that's been really gone for a while now. And there are not a lot of stars that they can do that with, because they don't have that right now. They're not in the process of changing championships on a regular basis. They haven't done it. Not in a long time. And then you're asking yourself, all right, well then what about who their opponents are? And how they might have certain opponents, and the significance that says, oh, okay, if somebody takes on a certain challenger, there's a very good chance that challenger could feasibly, predictably beat the champion. But we always get certain titles that never do that, right? We have certain stars that will go ahead and be contenders for the title. And one of the things we always had an issue with was sometimes the contendership matches were weak. Now we have contendership tournaments because Triple H wants it as such. Or they do sometimes do things where they might have a star they're building up and they're giving them a big winning streak, him or her, and then eventually working their way up to get the title match. In some way, shape, or form. Sometimes, but, they don't have a thing where there's a pecking order of you're moving up the ladder and there are certain stars you have to beat and work your way up to the top. Only a handful of stars really have done that in the last few decades. Pretty much. Now, in the current setup of the current championships and their reigns, on the Raw side, Seth Rollins has been World Heavyweight Champion 207 days, and he beat AJ Styles in the tournament final at Night of Champions. Remember, the consolation belt. But have they done enough in the last, 6 months to really build that title? I don't think the World Heavyweight title means a whole lot if it's not Seth Rollins. And there may be another couple of names that might matter. But to me, Seth Rollins holding this belt right now is significant for me. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter if he's World Heavyweight Champion or not. Seth Rollins is over. Okay? He is a featured star. And if they want to put him in featured feuds, they can. He is one of those guys that can do that. Cody Rhodes in the same way. After that, there's not many. There's really not. See, I always talk about the fact that the roster, the folks that are on the main roster that could be elevated to the main event and be put into the main event, and they have a certain amount of legitimacy, reputation, and that we could believe as fans they could be at this level. See, we get stars that are in the upper mid card, and they can move up to the main event level sometimes. The Usos are equally at that spot right now as individual stars. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre also. At this moment, I'm not sure where CM Punk is in the mix because we haven't seen him wrestle yet. We haven't seen how they have booked CM Punk yet in the ring. Now, everything could be put out that it could be that way. Like LA Knight has been put into a spot where he can goes up to the main event, but, drops back down. Shinsuke Nakamura, brought up to the main event for a while, brought back down. Because, remember, WWE has to be able to be in control of what they're doing with the people that are going to have the belts. And this is something that was very meticulous that Vince put on. So it just can't be some rung on the muck. They're not going to have title changes where it's somebody out of nowhere that's going to get a chance to win the title and they're going to have a shocking win. We haven't had that in a long time. We don't get these upset victories. That doesn't happen. Very little. The only upset victories we ever get are Money in the Bank cash-ins. That's it. And the fact of the matter is that even the Money in the Bank briefcases don't do too much. I mean, who's had the briefcases and has really done something much? You could say that on the women's side, sure. But on the men's side, no, not really. I mean, if I wanted to just look at the Money in the Bank winners and who's won them in the last couple of years. Think about that, right? So let's look at the last couple of years, right? Let's just go and look back at, we'll just start at the pandemic. We'll start at 2020. Okay, Otis was the winner of the Money in the Bank briefcase, and then they had the whole storyline with Miz, and then Miz went after Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship and won. And then Bobby Lashley, it was going to be Big E, had the briefcase, and he cashed in on Bobby Lashley, and he won. Okay, and then Theory, he faced Seth Rollins when he won the cash in last year. Nothing, right? And so, of those three, where are we at so far with those folks, right? You're thinking about this. And then before that, we could say, well, Brock Lesnar, he won the Money in the Bank and beat Seth Rollins for the Universal title. That's in 2019. And then Braun Strowman, he won Money in the Bank, took on Roman Reigns, failed to cash in. Baron Corbin, he won Money in the Bank in 2017, failed to cash in against Jinder Mahal, right? So look at the stars you have right here. The Money in the Bank doesn't necessarily hold a lot of relevance. I mean, when you think about that, you would think that some of the stars that win the briefcase are going to be significant. Right now, remember, Damian Priest is the guy that has the briefcase. He's not cashed it in yet. And who's he going to cash it in against? Because right now, okay, he's in the title picture with the tag team titles, but really, what else? Like, they're not even considering or talking anything about the briefcase. It's just not even being considered. Like, what are we going to do with that? It's like Otis having the briefcase. It didn't make any sense then. It was just something to do because of the storyline had it, and they had to write their way out of it. And that's the problem right now, is that if you want to make a change on the titles, you have to write something. You have to be able to write your way out of the jam that you're in, because there was always something that happened that caused the titles to change like it did. Okay. The reason why Roman Reigns has what was the original WWE Championship and the Universal Championship combined to fuse into the Undisputed Universal Championship, remember, is because Brock Lesnar, right? Or no, Roman Reigns could not defend, right? At day one. Because Roman Reigns had COVID. And so then Brock Lesnar came in and won. You know, he went ahead and went, since Brock Lesnar could not take on Roman Reigns again, then Brock Lesnar entered himself into the World Heavyweight title match, right? He went into the WWE Championship match, the Fatal 5-Way, and won. And then they put him together at WrestleMania, and then Roman Reigns took it as one. But the thing was, there was no plan in place. They had to go ahead and retcon what they were doing before, because they got to the Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match, but the titles were different. A whole different thing came in. Remember, why do you think we have a new World Heavyweight title in the first place? Because they don't want to go ahead and split the belts, right? And then on top of that, they said, well, we're just going to create a new belt, because Triple H and the folks on USA or the Raw program, they said, well, we need to have a championship title over there, because Roman Reigns is going to hold this belt. He's not going to defend both. They're going to be already combined. They combined it, and it's done. And now what are you going to do? So now we're at the point where, and by the way, Roman Reigns still comes out with both belts. Remember, he still comes out with both. And now we're at the point where, no, because he only comes in with one. He used to be with two, right? But I guess it is one. But now we're at the point where the Money in the Bank cash-ins have not mattered. They have not been used in order to get somebody younger up the ranks. Not yet. A Theory failed cash-in, and then he won the U.S. title, off and on. And he hasn't done much else since. There's no building up of stars to this spot. Okay, now, if you do see some stars that are younger and potentially going to move up the rankings in the main roster, maybe to the main event, their main event potential, they'll be in the Money in the Bank ladder match. They'll be in the Royal Rumble. But other than that, they don't win. It's always the tried and truth, right? For the most part. Because that's your other way of getting into the title match. Now, let's take the women's side. Let's just go that real quickly. If you're looking at the women's side, okay, Nikki ASH. Remember, we had the whole almost a superhero. She won the belt, and by the way, she's not even relevant anymore. She's back to sanity Nikki Ross, and it's just a jobber. Asuka won in 2020, and she won the belt. And remember, she had to drop the belt. What was it? She didn't have to defend. She didn't have to go in and wrestle at all, because Becky Lynch got hurt. Asuka was just granted the women's title, but not the Raw women's title. Let's go back to 2019. Bayley, she beat Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown women's title, right? Let's move forward. Okay, Liv Morgan, she beat Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown women's title. Yeah, okay, there was one. And if Liv Morgan, didn't get hurt, and right now planning her way to come back, as she did not get arrested for synthetic cannabinoids in Sumter County in Florida. Okay, I don't understand what the charge is all about. I mean, I guess, it's possession of synthetics, not actual, and I guess she doesn't have a medical marijuana card. Why she doesn't, I don't know. But, it's a misdemeanor. And maybe it's just going to be, under the rug because she is a pretty big star the way they put her in the company. So Liv Morgan can still be put up the ranks anyway and still be a main eventer somewhere, some way, because Ronda Rousey basically allowed that to happen. Remember. Now let's get back to what we talked about with the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble winners. Let's talk about that now. Because then you got to ask yourself, well, what do we have about those? Because the same thing. I mean, how many stars do we have that have also been brought up here? Because as I'm just making my point here, folks, okay, on the graphic I got on the show tonight, let me just put it like this. Okay, there's a handful of people that are in that main event that are legitimately able to be in the main event, that people will believe could be contenders that you could put in the main event of WrestleMania to take on Roman Reigns. Okay? There is. Not even a question there. At CM Punk, right now, CM Punk, I would think, would be, the way he's been booked, would be that first one. And then I would put Seth Rollins second. We know The Rock would be absolutely someone that could be in that spot, and people would want that spot, but The Rock's not going to be there. If you remember everything we're being told, it's not going to happen. So let's not worry about Rock. Within the main roster that's there every week, you got CM Punk now, who, yeah, you want to put him against Seth Rollins? We could wait for that. I already said before that CM Punk, we could wait for him to take on Roman Reigns, say at Royal Rumble, right? Let's just get him in the title picture because that's the first thing to go. We don't need to have CM Punk in a program with Roman Reigns. No, just give him the shot. CM Punk loses, and then you make CM Punk turn heel, and then he takes on Seth Rollins, and then go for a long program with that. And then you go wherever you want. Because CM Punk right now, in his initial spot, he's coming back with such fanfare and so much, presence. While you have him so hot right now and such a draw right now because he's been to that WWE audience, he's been off their TVs for 10 years. Remember, we're not even counting or even giving credit to AEW and his run there. Remember, the audience here, the bubble, these fanatics, they're not going to recognize his AEW run. That's just the way it is. Now, this program I do. But the fans that are out there, a lot of them, they're not going to. They're the same fans that think that Warner Brothers Discovery is going to drop Dynamite and put Raw on their channel. Okay, they're the same ones that are believing that story that keeps going out there, which, by the way, it's only dirt sheets reporting it. No one in the mainstream press, nobody in the media press, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, The Wrap, nobody's talking about it. Reuters, AP, New York Times, no one is talking about Warner Brothers Discovery doing this. As far as I know, another rumor came out that Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount might be merging, but we'll find that out. And if there's anything to that, I'll talk about that tomorrow on the Broadcasters Podcast, which you can, of course, find here at kingofpodcasts.com. But anyway, that's tomorrow. I mean, there's enough reasons to say why AEW will not be moving, but we're not going to worry about that. Let's just get back to the point. Back to my argument. So we identified who are the stars that are most likely there that could be contenders for Roman Reigns' Universal Championship. And then we have to figure out not just contenders that could just be in a match with him. We're talking about contenders that could win the title off of Roman Reigns and be the new champions and represent the company in the highest fashion. With mainstream appeal. They could be on Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon. They could be on the Today Show. They could be on wherever you want, ESPN. And people will just, flock because they say, oh, look, here's a new champion. Who has that kind of mainstream appeal? Cody Rhodes? Yeah, I think so. I thought he did when he brought him back. But, hey, Vince was still in charge. And WrestleMania last year, they chose Roman Reigns, won again. Cody was not going to be the one. They gave him that time to come into the company. Year before, took on Seth Rollins, mystery opponent. 1 year ramp. And once we got to Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, they could have pulled the trigger right there, but they didn't. Now, retrospect, they were right to do that. I mean, I felt bad that Cody did not win, but I do think that Cody, not winning it right now, and what we got from the Bloodline storyline and the legacy that we have with Roman Reigns and the title run right now, the thing is that with a title reign that Roman Reigns has right now, okay, 1,207 days. Now that's the Universal title. If you want to combine before that, you could combine the, what is it? That's 1,207 days right now. We're getting to 4 years. So it's not the significance about the fact that Roman Reigns could lose the belt at any time. That's not the way they're positioning. Is the fact that whoever's going to win the title, it's going to be somebody that after all the other opponents, after 1,200 days, there's one star that's going to be able to go ahead and take him on a big stage because they want to make sure that everybody sees this title change. This thing gets the most press possible. And for them to get the most press possible, they needed to be somebody, the right person, that's going to win that belt off of Roman Reigns. So we mentioned CM Punk. We mentioned Cody Rhodes. I mentioned Seth Rollins. The other name I guess you could put is Gunther. Because Gunther in his own right has been a very strong championship contender because of the fact he's been the IC champion. He is the longest reigning, right? 558 days right now. Remember, he won on SmackDown against Ricochet. And has not stopped looking. We're looking again. By the time we get to WrestleMania, he's going to have held that belt. It's going to be, we're not on 2 years yet, but we're already, a year and 8 months or something like that. Very long run. Very long run, and that's incredible. That's strong. So now what do we do next? Okay, if it's not going to be finding a championship contender of those that are not going to be good enough, because we don't know who they're going to have yet. Like I said, they could go right to CM Punk if they wanted. They could go to Cody Rhodes if they wanted. If they could get The Rock, they would do that first. But then who do you else have after that? If you created a star that could be defined as a potential star that could win and beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, well, we know the one way to do it is to be in the Royal Rumble match. So in the Royal Rumble match, here's what we got so far. The last couple of years. Think about it. Let's go back to 2020. Drew McIntyre, he became a WWE champion because at that point the title not changed yet, right? Just trying to make sure where I'm at here. There we go. So back when it was still the WWE Championship, right? Well, actually, go back to August 2020, right? Triple threat match, right? The Fiend Bray Wyatt was the previous champion, and Roman Reigns won it off of him. Yeah. And then he beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 38 Night 2, winner takes all match to combine both belts. Now, we know that's all that came about since. So Brock Lesnar, okay, he won in 2022, right? 2021 was Edge when he returned, right? And Drew McIntyre won in 2020, and then Cody Rhodes won in 2023. But those stars right now, asked who were champions at that point? Drew was the WWE champion, right? Not Universal. Edge, I don't think he won. I forget what it was, but I forget what happened with Edge and why, where he went in terms of the title. I can't remember. Sorry, guys. I'm just not that good at it. Brock Lesnar, he had a chance to go and go after Roman Reigns, but like I said, the results, what they were doing instead was, who won the Royal Rumble was going after who was the Universal Champion, because that would be Roman Reigns. Whoever won the Royal Rumble in the last 3 years would be going after Roman Reigns, right? But then you have to say to yourself, all right, well, you could have the Royal Rumble winner go after Seth Rollins, and they could do that. But if you find out who's going to be in the Royal Rumble this year, is there anybody that you see among the stars that could be in the Royal Rumble that could totally be the champion? Let's go back to the results of the Royal Rumble. Let's just go back to last year's Royal Rumble and ask ourselves, okay, who was it they're going to have that could be definitely in the running to take on Roman Reigns if they won the Royal Rumble match? There's not a lot of new names since then, right? So look, The Miz, Kofi Kingston, Johnny Gargano, Xavier Woods, Karrion Kross, Chad Gable, Drew McIntyre, Santos Escobar, Angelo Dawkins. See, we're going through the names here. Brock Lesnar was brought in, right? And then you look and say, okay, Bobby Lashley, but that's not somebody they're going to bring up into that spot again, not right now. Baron Corbin, no. Seth Rollins, freaking Rollins, Otis, Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, Elias, Finn Balor, Booker T, Damian Priest, Montez Ford, Edge, Austin Theory, Omos, Braun Strowman, Ricochet, Logan Paul, Cody Rhodes. Now, we already had Logan Paul take on Roman Reigns. I mean, you could kind of say if Logan Paul wanted to get back up there, you could, but they're not. And I mean, if you wanted to, you could have Logan Paul go up against Seth Rollins if he won the Royal Rumble match. But that's neither here nor there. They don't have anything planned like that yet. And we don't know what they're going to do with the Royal Rumble yet in terms of who's going to go after who yet. We don't know anything about who's going to be in the match except for CM Punk, who's already declared. But way too soon to go ahead and say who else could be from the main roster that could go ahead and be elevated in 5 months to be positioned and shined up to be a brand new contender to Roman Reigns' Universal Championship. There's not a name in there that you could find for me. There's not. And until there is, the company has nobody right now they can bring up at that level that can automatically be brought up to the spot and say, okay, you know what? We need to consider the fact that maybe there's something to be said about we don't have any stars to build up right now that could be at that spot because of the current roster that we have. Like, ask yourself. Like, I want to find that out, right? Somebody help me here. Help me figure out who could be on the roster that could definitely be put up there at the moment. Like, I mean, ask me that. Help me out with that. Like, seriously, help me out with that. Who would there be that I can really bring up? So if I want to look at who we have in the company right now, that could be considered somebody you could just raise themselves up so quickly and make them just an automatic contender for Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns' titles. I just want to take that one scenario because this is the epitome of what the company's at right now. This is the problem I have. The ultimate problem. Because I know more than anything else, listen, the fanatics out there, okay, listen, I'm not judging or blaming you. I know this is how you feel because this is the way the company's built as it's always been. But the problem is that they've always built the importance of the show around who's in the main event. And the main event is always the champion. And it was fine if you had, like, say John Cena or if you had Randy Orton or whoever, because you'd have different opponents and you'd have different people that were at a certain level. But you've built Roman Reigns at such a level now that there's no one feasibly, like, it's got to be a complete upset. And then, you want to be able to have a star that you're going to be able to build. Like, if it were Vince back in the day, he would want, when Bruno Sammartino dropped the belt, the first time was the superstar Billy Graham, right? And Superstar was made a big deal to hold that belt. Made to a big star. And then Bob Backlund the same way. Big star. Because they're both Hall of Famers in their own right. But who is there right now in this main roster? Like, even if you wanted to go with a young star, an up-and-comer, or somebody that's been around and is just hitting a hot winning streak and believably could be brought up, and the gimmick is so good already that you could just build that person up. You could have them win through the entire roster. And then they work their way up. though. This company is not doing that. They don't do that at all. And because where AEW is at right now, they can do that because, you know, they don't have anyone at that level of star power. TNA doesn't have it, right? The same thing goes. And as I look at the names that we have, sure, we have some veterans you can always bring up to that spot if you wanted to prefer it. AJ Styles is one. If I'm going from A to Z, and I look at the names we have right here, like seriously, of the stars they have right now, okay, let's say Big E. If he was able to go and come back from his neck injury, and he could come back right now, I mean, you could definitely build him up. And his title reign, we didn't say was very well. I mean, it wasn't booked well. He wasn't positioned very well. Like, he was champion, and, you know, deservedly so, but not much more. They didn't put anything up there for him to really be more than that. It's just they weakened him. He wasn't a strong champion. They could have done much better. Bobby Lashley, I mean, you could try to build him back up, but they've already done it so many times. He can't be up there and be that top guy. Brock Lesnar, I don't know. You can always build Brock Lesnar back up, but the problem is he's been up there so many times. And then if I look at who else we have, okay, I'm going to the C's. I don't see anyone. If I go into we got Cody Rhodes and CM Punk now on the list. You could definitely put them up there. I don't see Damian Priest being anything where they could build him up to a higher spot. And also, he right now has it as peak at the moment anyway. He's been U.S. champion, and he's been tag team champion. And he's got this title in the briefcase. Not much else. Dominic Mysterio, down the line. But Dominic Mysterio has to become face in order for him to be someone that can be credible to Roman Reigns. But at the moment, Dominic Mysterio, you know, you can see him as world championship material another 5, 7, 10 years down the line. Like, he's got such a long career ahead of him anyway. Like right now, he is excelling. Maybe overachieving a little bit than expected. But he is standing on his own. Him and Rhea Ripley are the draws of the Judgment Day. Like, really, you don't have to have Finn Balor or Damian Priest and JD McDonough is a throwaway. But if it's just Rhea and Dominic, that's the draw. It's not Judgment Day. Judgment Day is the draw only because of Rhea and Dom, the Bonnie and Clyde. That's it. That's the only reason, in my opinion. And that's not trying to shoot down the level of that Finn Balor and Damian Priest can perform, but Finn Balor, no one expects him, no one can believe him to be up there again because, you know, you're talking about somebody that went back down to NXT, came back up, and the thing was that with Finn Balor, you know, when Vince wanted to have become champion, he was Universal Champion, right? The first one. And then he got hurt on the night he won the belt. And he also had to be the Demon. He can't be just Finn Balor. And Triple H probably also knows they won't be able to put him that way either. So they can't expect him to be that. Gunther, I mean, how often have you had an international champion? Well, we could say Yokozuna, but I mean, or Sheamus, but really, who is there if it's not someone that is American? Like, how often do you say you're going to find someone that would be feasible to be a champion? But the other thing too is that, and this is, unfortunately, this is not meant to be a knock on Gunther, but the charisma and the sports entertainment aspect, that's not him. Gunther is a wrestler. And just, you know, he is the draw because he's a wrestler, because of his style of wrestling. But he's not a sports entertainer. Not in any sense. But they need that diversity. There is some of that is important because he does have a very set importance in that company. But the sports entertainers are the ones that have to be able to do that. They got to be the ones that can be the champions. So when we're talking about a CM Punk, a Seth Rollins, or, you know, Cody Rhodes, yeah, all charisma, all able to go ahead and be multi-versatile and do whatever is needed of the company that the WWE really needs, you know, however they're going to use them to be able to do not just what they're going to do with the ring, but what they can do, you know, signings at events, being on television, on other shows, and being multi-versatile, right? Next. The Usos, it's going to take time for them as individual stars to really be at that level, but they're not. Like, they're definitely able to go ahead and jump into that main roster, in that main event as necessary, but not all the time. You could put John Cena in there, but, John Cena, the fans don't want to see him being champion again. I don't know. Maybe we'll see him one more time. But that's about it. But really, he's a future Hall of Famer. We've seen so much of him, and he's not coming back full time. So he's not going to be an answer. He already was the answer for 10 years plus. Like, he doesn't have to go ahead and serve that role again. Karrion Kross, well, they screwed up with him. They screwed up with Karrion Kross multiple times. Let me tell you. And it's not just Vince that screwed him up. I think Triple H also screwed him up when they brought him up because, the gimmick needed much more dimensional, more dimensions. Even though the aesthetics, the visuals were perfect, were great, but there needed to be much more depth to the character, and there wasn't. And then they didn't book him right. He kept losing. And they didn't even put him in any serious feuds that could really, bolster him up. So there was always some kind of a stigma on him anyway, no matter what. Kevin Owens, he's already been up there. But that's also somebody that's already been there so many times. How many more times can you just put him back in that spot? LA Knight, you've seen his peak. Him going after Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel, that's as high as he's going to get. You're not going to see LA Knight going after titles like that. Not you got through. I mean, see, he still hasn't even gone after and gotten a singles title yet, a US or IC. He hasn't even got that yet. He hasn't been a tag team champion yet. He's got nothing. He's just not going to just go right up and become a world champion. They're not going to do that to him. Now, Logan Paul, they already did the thing where they gave him the upset. They did give him the US title. I mean, they could, if there was anybody that would be an offshoot, a dark horse that could maybe down the line become a world champion. Yeah, Logan Paul has a chance to be, but he's also got other things. He's not completely dedicated to the company. And I think that's also a detriment to him, because if he was full time, he was there every week, it would be a different story. But they could do it, but he's got to get paid. So what, they got to pay him to be on there every week? I don't know if it would work for them. I can keep looking at names here. There's not, when you think about it, who else is there on this roster that really fits and would be an immediate change? Like, and I'm not talking NXT stars. There's nobody. I'm sorry, not Braun Breaker, right? Not Braun Breaker, not Carmelo Hayes. I'm sorry, no. Trick Williams, no, absolutely not. No, not yet. No, way too early. Trick Williams needs to change the gimmick. Like, he needs to evolve when he goes to that main roster. He cannot be doing hustle and flow, whoop that trick. I'm sorry. Maybe if you have Terrence Howard come on, okay, main, Trick Williams is my main, I give him the permission. Like, if I don't see Terrence Howard coming on main and give permission to Trick Williams to say yes, okay, and hustle and flow and like the whole thing, MTV Studios, they give the blessing. Oh, here you go. Or at least acknowledge the fact they took it from there. I can't in right conscience. No. And then what else do we have? Okay, Randy Orton. Okay, listen, you can always reheat Randy Orton and bring him back up to the main event. Absolutely. Now, they're going to set things up so that Randy Orton and Roman Reigns face each other, but it's a one-off. Maybe a feud, but it's a one-off to me. That's it. That's where I think things are right now. So, yeah, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, Royal Rumble, got it. But do we expect Randy Orton to win? I don't. I mean, all of you can go ahead and just put that in your minds and just feel like, oh, maybe there is. You got to feel like you just can't, you have to just be completely delusional and just say, well, maybe it's going to be that way. And I can't do that. Sami Zayn, they put him up there. But he's also like, it's been a long time since he won. He was an IC champion. At the moment, he's not going to be any spot where he's going to be put into the IC title. Like, he's not going after Gunther. He's not going to go after, Logan Paul, at least I don't think so yet. But also it's because of where he is on the roster. He's on the Raw roster. So Seth Rollins, we already said. We already very definitively made clear. Solo Sikoa. Now, that's a different story. I think what they're doing right now in the Bloodline storyline, which was significant last week, that Solo Sikoa has now already been appointed the next in line as the tribal chief. Now, whenever they decide to go ahead and make the switch that Roman Reigns drops the belt, we know he'll be on hiatus. They're not going to just let him come back out there and he's going to be after losing the belt. No, he'll just go away. He'll disappear. Now, Solo Sikoa has the biggest upside. Solo Sikoa has the biggest upside in the company right now. Of anybody that could be a consistent main event star, especially if you keep Paul Heyman accompanying him, yes, without a shadow of a doubt. Solo Sikoa is main event star. He's a main event star. And they've done things right now where he's been put in a good spot. He doesn't lose a lot. He beat John Cena. They're putting him in the spots to be in the right place. Okay? He's taking some pins, but not too much where he's been kept very strong. And within that bloodline storyline, it's just significant for him. Because he's going to benefit the most out of that storyline after Roman Reigns steps away. And if they decide to put him as tribal chief, man, that's going to work. Because that is the biggest upside they have in the company. Then I would put Dominic Mysterio right now. When you're talking about like younger stars that have got their way up, yeah. Dominic Mysterio's in there. Logan Paul can be put in that mix too, but will he ever be full-time? I don't know. And then I think Austin Theory's not that far from there. I think he'll always be, there'll be some consideration that he's got to be somewhere considered in that. And then I look at who else do we have left. Looking at names, and I don't see anyone else that makes me think that eventually they're main event material. They're not. Not Von Wagner, no. Why do you think I'm so critical of this company? Does anybody ask, why do you think I'm always been so particular about this company? I'm not satisfied with just, that it's okay, that it's decent, that only the main fan base likes what we're seeing on TV every week. No. See, WWE is not allowed. They're not allowed to be just another wrestling company. They're not. They are the trendsetters. They set the bar. They raise the bar. And the bar has to be met. They have to be above the bar. The expectations, listen, it's indicative of what they do themselves, okay? If they're going to be the successful international company that they are, where they can sell out Berlin next year and Paris, and they're going to sell out Philadelphia next year, and who else were they going to go to? They're going to go back to London, right? They're going to go ahead, big countries, big stadiums. You need stars like Roman Reigns, and if you don't, you struggle. And we've seen that happen where those who struggle to get, Dallas and be able to now do 2 nights of WrestleMania. It's no longer 1. It has to be 2. You need to be able to get enough people to go ahead and sell and buy and sell out. And they're selling out right now. But that's right now. Hell, man, even when WCW was, on this way down and NWO was already like losing favor, it's because the momentum of what was going on was already still being carried through. So into 1998, yeah, WCW could still sell out shows. But the NWO was already dying as a stable, right? They had switched to Wolfpack, and they were just trying to find things just to keep it going. And some of the stars they had were already getting older. They did not change to getting younger stars ready. That's another thing they need to be able to continue to do. That the WWE in the past has done the right thing and made sure they had stars that were ready to go ahead and be brought up. But they do not build stars. Okay, and the NXT side, there is no one at the moment that I see on the NXT side. You want to say Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams? Yeah, okay, for sure. But not at the level, once they go to that main roster, the odds of them failing because the gimmick they have in NXT does not resonate to the main roster. Can we just remember how many times we've done that? Okay? How many times have we had stars that were so over on that main roster? Okay, except for the fact of what? The Shield, the Wyatts. Like, who else really put out there? I mean, a different story when you have some veteran stars that just need to polish with Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Shinsuke Nakamura, sure. But when you had Adam Rose or, Tyler Breeze or Fandango, right? Like, remember, you had these other stars and other things that they had that they try to be draws, but like, how far could they go and how one-dimensional were they and how much depth did they have? And what kind of feuds would they have that really would stand out, There are stars that have been finding their way up the ranks, and they're, part of it is, well, listen, Dominic Mysterio, it's also because it's the generational thing. Cody Rhodes, generational. And with some other stars, they've just worked their asses off across the whole board. Right? And that's where I look at all this and I'm saying to myself, this is why I want this company to do better. Listen, I do not shit this company on purpose. I am not. For those that got upset with me last week, because I said, and I put a clip out and I said, listen, do I lean towards AEW and what they're doing in their programming? Absolutely. I said that. But, people said I'm an AEW fanboy. All right, whatever. You took my words into context, okay? You wanted to go, define it the way you want. And you could tell me, but this is the way you define it. Okay, listen, you want to go and mince with words? I don't care. See, the thing is, you think you're going to go and tell me something and you think you're going to get me all upset and like all in a huff. Yeah, that works for all you people on the keyboard warriors over there on X and TikTok, but that doesn't work for me. Okay, it doesn't matter. But doing this 11 years, do you think I've been doing anything for this show to build the audience based on what the feedback is, that I got to make people like me? No. Hey, have I grown this program to be like, in 11 years, has this program gotten like 10, 100,000, downloads a month? No. It's actually probably been around the same spot as it always been. Because I just want somebody listening. And sometimes people will listen more than others, and that's great. But, I mean, really? No. There's not much more to that. Does that make sense, everybody? Am I making sense to all of you? I hope I am. And I've already basically carried to the hour making this point. Now let's go to the other champions, and we also got to talk a little bit about World's End, AEW's pay-per-view that's coming out not this Saturday, but next Saturday. We'll talk about that. But let's get to the current champions again. All right, so we talked so much about Roman Reigns and the future stars and the stars that should be filling the roles of champions after. Because even for Gunther's IC title, who do you have that takes that spot that really fits? Because remember, for the IC title, it should be somebody that's on the way up to becoming eventually a world champion, right? So for me, the one person I can think of right now that I think would be absolutely, besides the NXT North American title that Dominic Mysterio had, Dom should be going after Gunther at some point. Because that's the next belt he can go after. I honestly believe that Dom and Gunther, they can go to that route, but, they're not. But, I mean, if Dominic was going to go to the next step, the next level for him would be an IC title run, a secondary title. At least I think so. But the other thing, too, is that they're not also just letting some original star like an AJ Styles, Randy Orton, or, Cody Rhodes or CM Punk. They're not going after the IC title. I mean, they let Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, they went after the IC title, but like really, who else do they have right now that would be the person that would take the belt off of Gunther? That's the question. Because then you have to wait for Gunther to drop the belt for them to put him and boost him up into the main event and become a potential opponent for Roman Reigns. But until the IC title's dropped, he's going to stay where he is. And they're going to continue to use that title run to build him up. Right? The Women's World title, Rhea Ripley, I mean, she's been the only person that's held that belt as it's been renamed. and she's doing great. And there's not a whole lot of contenders underneath her unless they build somebody up that they think that would be a spot. All right. Becky Lynch is basically on her own, and she can basically be, in a feud with whoever she wants. Right now, she's going after Nia Jax because they can finally go back to that storyline of, Nia Jax, hitting her in the face, and they can go back to that whole storyline and finally have the match and finally have the feud they should have had, which they never did. At least I don't remember they did. I think they just had like one match. That was it. Io Sky is still pretty new as the women's champion, beating Bianca Belair, cashed at Money in the Bank. See, the Money in the Bank cash has worked much more effectively on the women's side. And then Rey Mysterio losing to Logan Paul, Crown Jewel. Those titles, you can do whatever you want with those. And the tag team titles, you also got a pretty long run with some of these folks. And not so much right now, because actually, women's tag team titles, whether it was Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, and now they drop them to Katana Chance and Kaden Carter. Yeah, women's title, irrelevant to me. Yeah, TV titles, nice, okay, but that don't mean much else. They're not going to draw. And for the Judgment Day, they've changed it a couple times. After Usos had a very long run with it, even the tag team titles, yeah, that's okay. Not much more difference to me. They just fit more into the storyline of the faction than they do for anything else. And that's the way I look at it. All right, let's go and get to things when it comes to what they've been doing in AEW. Listen, they've definitely been working on the fact that they have so much with the devil and the devil's men and the whole storyline that is surrounding MJF, who has been champion, who has a target on his back by Samoa Joe, by Swerve Strickland, among others. Then there's the deal with Adam Cole and where he is right now because he's still hurt. And the deal with the Kingdom and Roderick Strong and all these other players that are all attached to wherever it is with MJF's title reign, some way, shape, or form. And so we got that to work on. And there's other things that are going on as well. But for the most part, they're working on their deal and they're just trying to, to me, it's just, I'm just watching and just trying to get something out of what they're going to do in terms of where MJF is still top star. He is the main eventer still and has held the belt for a long time now, more than a year. And where do we go next? And as we know, Samoa Joe will take on MJF at World's End. And then what do we do after that coming up? You got to ask yourself, what do you do after that going forward? That's the part I'm not sure goes up next. Because I don't have an answer for that. So we know that the World Tag Team titles will have Ricky Starks and Big Bill against the Golden Jets. But at the moment, Kenny Omega still has diverticulitis. So is he going to be coming back in time? We know that the Riho is going to take on Toni Storm for the Women's World title. And then we'll have the finals of the Continental Classic Tournament, where we're going to be finally at that and see where we're going to have the final members that'll be in this overall. Because we don't know that yet either. Now, we already have the Gold League final matchups that'll be happening next Wednesday, and that is Jon Moxley, Swerve Strickland, and Jay White. That is set up there. And then the Blue League finals, we don't know anything yet because we still have 3 more matches to go ahead and set up as I record. Andre El Idolo versus Eddie Kingston, Claudio Castagnoli versus Bryan Danielson, Brody King versus Daniel Garcia. And then we'll see which 3 members will have their own final match. And the winner of those 2 matches will then be in the final of the Continental Classic. Okay? And they will determine who's going to be, champion for... Remember this, we will have a crowned AEW Continental Champion. And at the same time, that Continental Classic winner will become the Ring of Honor World Champion and the Strong Openweight Champion of New Japan Pro Wrestling. There'll be a Triple Crown champion overnight. So that's how much they've made this Continental Classic tournament matter. And they've been good matches. So we're going to get to that and we'll get to the end of it in this round robin tournament. 12 wrestlers. We're going to finally get down to 2, and we'll have that at World's End. Great. So it's all really well set up and good. And it's been enjoyable to watch, right? Obviously giving you something to watch over the last couple of months post Full Gear, and because of the fact that they're the last ones doing a pay-per-view coming up, and that's it. Now, I didn't bring up full... you know what? I did not do Final Battle. I did not do results for it. I didn't watch the show. I'll tell you what it is, man. With Ring of Honor, it's still in limbo. Like, I've enjoyed a number of the events they've had for Ring of Honor in terms of what they're setting up, but right now we're at the point where, I mean, Tony Khan still just, he's kind of putting that brand in limbo. He hasn't really done much to move it forward or to really identify much of who's on there anyway. They're not doing that right now because of the fact that there's no TV deal for it. Like, it's still Honor Club, and it's still, that's it. Like, I mean, sure, you want to get more out of that, but they just have certain stars that are already in the mix as champions, right? But other than that, it doesn't matter. Like, what they're doing right now, I mean, I don't think there was nobody that won. I don't think there was any changes of titles, right? No, I think, what is it? Everybody that did have, like, there were only a couple of belts that were actually up online anyway. And for the most part, you know, they just kind of like had it as it is. So at the moment, no titles changed. Nothing newsworthy really happened on here, right? If you look at the matches they had, right? Besides the pre-show, El Hijo de Vikingo defeated Black Taurus, AAA Mega Championship. So Ring of Honor has these other titles they put out there, and it's just like, okay, putting it on her front anyway. Local Embassy retains the World 6-Man Tag Team titles over TMDK. Ethan Page over Tony Nese in I Quit match. Nyla Rose beating Vert Vixen. She's not even, she's now just on the Ring of Honor roster, I guess. Kyle Fletcher. The vacant World Television title is put on the line, and Kyle Fletcher becomes a new Ring of Honor World TV Champion because Samoa Joe vacated it. So they got that set. Wheeler Yuta retained the Ring of Honor Premier Championship over Tom Lawler, who works mostly in MLW, but in other organizations. We had the feud with Keith Lee and Shane Taylor, which is a Ring of Honor hold back from before. And FTR and Mark Briscoe over the Blackpool Combat Club in a fight without honor. A Jay Briscoe Memorial fight without honor. And then a Proving Ground match for Eddie Kingston against Anthony Henry. And, it was a matter of just that Eddie Kingston did not have to defend the World Heavyweight Championship, but he did wrestle on the show, and that was it. And Athena over Billy Starks to retain the Ring of Honor Women's World title, and because she's been strong like that. But there was nothing really significantly changed, except for the fact that we do have a new TV champion, that's Kyle Fletcher. That's fine. But there's not much else that's really paying attention. It's just that Ring of Honor, to me, it's just the show that goes along, but it's not anywhere that people are watching it and people are not talking about it. And so, I mean, I caught some of it, but I really didn't pay much attention. Also putting on, Friday nights, not a good night for me. Or it was a Saturday night, and it was just like other things going on, so I just did not pay attention too much. All right, well, that's the show for the night. 11th anniversary show. The show will continue, and I thank all of you for catching this program where it's always been, one way, shape, or another, initially at kingofpodcasts.com. Kingofpodcasts.com. That's where you find the program and all my content. Of course, on social media, X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So find it. And please, thank you so much. If you've been listening at any point of these 816 episodes, thank you for listening in, as you always have. And as I close out every show, come back for another Wrestling's Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.